created an estimated 100,000 orphans. Thousands of South Korean children were adopted by families in the US and Western Europe. Meanwhile, many North Korean children were sent to the communist countries of Eastern Europe, but only for a few years before they were taken back home. Their experiences, or rather the experiences of their foster families, is the subject of a new film out today. It's called Kim Il-sung's Children, referring to North Korea's founder and wartime leader. And it's directed by Kim Deok-young. He's been telling me why the children were sent abroad.
1950년대는 냉전 체제였고요.
The 1950s was the Cold War era, and the Soviet Union at the time proceeded with this war orphan project. At this time, this project began on the basis of what was called socialistic cosmopolitanism. So I began researching data from a humanistic perspective. And after 15 years of research, I realised that this was closely related to North Korea's Kim Il-sungism in the end.
So essentially it was about indoctrinating the children in how great Kim Il-sung was and in communist and socialist ideology.
Yes, it was prepared in that context. Even though it started as a humanistic project, in reality there was intense North Korean ideological censorship and ideological education, especially based on the idolisation of Kim Il-sung in Eastern Europe in the 1950s.
But just on the humanitarian aspect, though, how vulnerable were these children? Presumably some of them were traumatised by the war that they'd endured.
그렇죠. 그런 맥락에서 준비가 됐었죠. 하지만
The trauma of war was huge, especially in Bulgaria in the 1950s. Some of the orphans would hide under desks or cry hiding behind teachers just from the sound of planes flying over them.
And how much do those families remember of that time?
매우 행복했죠. The
Europeans hold on to the orphans' photos, letters and albums as their lifelong treasure. I found a lot of letters and photos in my recent trip. Their memories of the children are desperate. The reason they can only be desperate is because the separation happened suddenly in the mid-1950s because of Kim Il-sung's summons, and the separation happened suddenly without any preparation. That's why they feel sad.
Do you know what happened to the orphans after they went back to North Korea?
네, 맞습니다. 보통 한 지역별로 한 10명 정도의
There's no way of finding that out. The only clue is that from 1956 to 1959, the returned children sent letters to their friends and their teachers in Europe. I found about 80 of them. And in those letters, they talk about their lives and how they remember the time they spent with their friends and teachers in Europe.
And as a filmmaker, what was it like meeting the families, the foster families, and seeing them remember looking after the children those years all the way back in the 1950s? Just give us a sense of that, of looking into their eyes and seeing them reminisce about those years.
그거를 알 수 있는 방법은 전혀 없고요.
I found 7 survivors in Bulgaria. They remember the children's names, their looks, like their hair colour and their faces, and the last moment of their separation. They remember it very clearly. They all left a message for me. They called out the names of each one of the children they desperately want to see again. They said that they hope they can see them again, and they were in tears when they said that. It was a very emotional moment.
Kim Deok-young, director of that documentary out today called Kim Il-sung's Children.